Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I am Pronogo. Today we are casting some Krankendau versus ArbuzBudesh. And yes, I know that means that you should have this watermelon, obviously. No, that's not exactly the translation, but it's got to do with watermelon, dude. Would you like one? It's time for some games. Just quickly sifting through, it looks like there's a nice selection of different maps here. So we will be starting things off on a 4-spawn map called Blackwater Bastion. Let's get into things. Cross positions, of course. Krankendau in the top right. Arbuz in the bottom left. It's Protoss versus Zerg. And you know what that means? It's time for me to take a sip. No need to change latency. Oh, maybe they're on CrownLink now. That's interesting. Yeah. CrownLink has gotten an update fairly recently. Pretty cool stuff. And worked out for sure in improvements here. And yeah, maybe they're just talking about their own connection. But there you go. There you go. So let's see what happens here with Krankendau representing Clan Oops and Arbuz not yet representing any clan. Although Luciferius recently changed allegiances from his own 420 clan into the United States Cosmonarchs for, you know, the aforementioned clan wars, the impending clan battles that will happen. Very cool stuff. Very cool stuff. This map is, of course, by BDB, Ben Taberski, the homie. The Chromie, the guy who has sponsored so many tournaments now with his company, the Pickup Partner, moving things from Biddy A to Biddy B. You guys know it by now. And it looks like Arbuz and Crank are going to go ahead and scout each other in the bottom right. And then they'll actually get the right scout after that. This is interesting. We have a pool opener here for Crank. It looks like he's trying to take a page out of AOT's book. Pool into Larvosk, maybe? Judging by all the Vespene, yeah, looks like he's going to go for that. So that's interesting. He's sending out a second worker for scouting, just in case he doesn't find Mr. Arbuz here. They both decide to cross paths and then never again. They're gone. Gonzo. Back at Arbuz's neck of the woods, he's going to open Lattice. So maybe giving up the Ecclesiast addiction. Quitting cold turkey versus Zerg for now. And no more Vespene coming means that indeed we are going to see just a straightforward sort of like pool scaling outputting here from Krankendau. I've heard tales of the double Larvosk all-in on one base. People have been experimenting with, Shambler chief among them, I guess. So that's interesting. And it looks like now we will have this worker returning home. Krankendau will arrive in time to see an idol pop out of this lattice and try to chase him down. And of course, the Zeths are already starting to tickle the worker, as Arbuz desperately tries to move back and forth. Of course. Oh, okay, yeah, over here is going to happen too. I was wondering what was going on. That worker is dead meat as soon as it walks into the idol here. But it looks like the scribe is dead. So, you know, even trade, right? Worker killed here, worker killed there. Honestly, the fact that we have corpses now as well is a pretty big deal, in my opinion. I was thinking to myself, I've been working on these animations for Zerg units, making it so that the new Zerg units will actually still look like themselves when they're turning back into the egg. And, you know, that's a really big deal, right? The Gazithalor, the Guardian, didn't have that initially. Ooh, cliff advantage for a third shot there. Wasn't expecting that. Now, let's see what happens here. But no, there's a Golem out. There's no hope for 6 Zeths versus that. One of them goes down, so that's 5 Zeths. Let's see how many workers they can attack. In the meanwhile, getting some good damage on some of them. Crank moving backwards. Oh no, there's a bit of a weird decollision there. One of the workers is going to go down. Only 2 Zeths left though, unlikely to get any additional frags. Idols will clean this up here. In fact, if they had maybe focused that one down, it was only 3 hits away, so it's definitely believable that it could have happened. But now it's Mass Quasi, and what will the follow-up be? Krankendau thinking about a hatch. He's going to go ahead and move his worker all the way to his natural. Arbuz has been conditioned away from moving out for now. We'll see if that changes. And a Hydrith Den with an Ovaleth follow-up. Interesting choice. Interesting choice. Okay, Krankendau is in business here. He's taken the tempo. He's trying to benefit from the fact that he is, of course, Zerg here, and he does have his Larvosk opening. Getting some more Zeths. A little bit of a fancy frontline. And since he's gone for the Hydrith, it's pretty clear to me that he's not going to be going into the Vornath anytime soon. So he won't be upgrading his pool. He won't be getting evolutions for his Quaz and Zeth units. So that won't be happening anytime soon. Certainly won't be going for the Nather cores either. So this is a pretty scary composition initially, the sort of automata that the Protoss can field. Not exactly something that you want to be going up against with only Quaz units. And so Crank is aware of that. Instead of trying to ply his trade with Vorvercors for armor rend, he's just going to go ahead and do his best with... no, you can't escape, unfortunately. He's just going to do his best to use Hydras and, of course, a Circuit. All of these Zeths and Quaz would actually be enough to hold this off if the attack did come in with trying to kill the Circuit or whatever. But the Hydras coming out here would prove even better for that. Now the expansion coming for Arbuz. He's a little bit behind, economically speaking. Only down 2 workers for now, but likely to change as Crank turns that lever. Kronk. There's a reference for you. You guys like references, right? I can just make my whole casts out of references. Too bad I'm blanking on all of the references now. Make sure you guys have your coffee before you cast. That's all I can advise. Earlier today, though, we did the donator discussion, which is pretty cool. Big fan of that. Our coffee supporters get to hang out while we talk shop for about an hour, sometimes longer. Let's see what happens now that the attack is coming, though. It certainly won't take an hour for these golems to die. Am I right, guys? It might, actually. Only 3 Hydras out right now. And honestly, that Circuit was fairly bruised. Not a single dead unit just yet. And it looks like another one is going to attempt to go down. But is Crank in too much trouble? He's making a bunch of Hydras. Remember, after this Kagran finishes, he's still going to have to go a step further and actually mutate it. Arbuz doing very nicely with the the interception actually hitting the Quaz there that was burrowed. Yeah, Arbuz doing very nicely to try to pressure, but this Circuit is going to finish, so even as he pops this one, unless he decides to move past it and try to go into the main, he's going to have to deal with another one, right? That remorph coming out. It's so tantalizing to try to go for that using the flash shielding and just kill it, but Crank is not exactly diving in front of it either, so, you know, it was a chance for him to maybe kill that Kagran fully. We've got more coming in the back here. Can obviously be filtered in. He's not lost a single Protoss unit just yet, which is very impressive. He's got more idols coming on in through the waypoints, has his Nexus up and building more workers. Interesting, interesting. It's like it's just this feint with the robotics units. Finally, the Hydras are going to pounce, start popping some of these idols. The Golems, though, they need to be focus fired, and they're not being it right now. All of the Hydras on one Golem, but the Zets on the other managed to give them shields aplenty. Could have maybe sent those idols to block the shots on, or sorry, the Zeths to block the shots on the idols so that they couldn't do much more. One of the Golems is very low. Hydra's now being pulled on in. Another Larvosk has concluded. You know what? I wouldn't hate... I mean, the Zerker Shroud is coming, right? I wouldn't hate the Zorius here, just to absorb some of the damage. But you got to watch out for them spreading that damage onto the Golems, right? So that's another concern. The Circuit attempting to remorph for a second time. Oh, ends up losing an idol. Maybe a second one if Crank is so inclined. Indeed he is. Golem's now stepping forward. You can see the tactic here from Crank, trying to just pick apart the Protoss when they're withdrawing. Maybe a little bit more tight army positioning could help Arbuz avoid that. But a Grand Library is on the way. That's going to be his choice to follow up the lattices. Protoss will soon actually have 50 units per race, since there's going to be more robotics units joining the fray, but I'm not 100% sure how soon that will be, guys. We are working on it. The Unitary Union is up and running already, but the need to extend iScript and finally finish that one up before we can add anything else to the game at this point, so that's very exciting stuff. Second Grand Library now, an embassy as well. Okay, interesting. I guess this is going to be another Larvosk. We still haven't seen any... no, that's a Spraith. Okay, I was going to say we haven't seen any anti-air. We haven't really seen an attempted scout. Leovoleth was destroyed earlier. And he's got one over here, but he's not actually sent it across to see what his opponent is following up with. We've got some Amaranths coming out. So he wants some sort of like friendly, you know, like tanky, self-sustaining things. We've got a lot of Lachezilisks as well. My concern for that is obviously that with the Lachezilisks, sure, they're going to shred the idols, but they will splash the Golems, and splash is what Golems work best against. So you do have to watch out for that. Maybe the idea is just to bleed their shields enough that it won't matter. All right, here comes the forward positioning. You can see those golems definitely staying alive a lot longer than maybe expected. This one's very low, though, so its focus fire is, oh, not quite going to go down, but pretty damn close. The Amaranth is up next here in a moment with only 5 health, but narrowly manages to avoid death, perhaps. Now, there we go. He ends up getting bopped on the way out. You got to watch out for your retreats, because obviously this is Brood War pathing, right? So we've made some improvements to the unit movement in general, but they still do get bogged up on the way out, which makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. Okay, here we go. Another engagement, and the Lakizilisks are being spotted by the Witness. Arbuz retreating just to buy enough time for that. And the front line is still not yet going down, although there's only one golem left, so yeah, it will eventually die. But yes, needs to evacuate now. He's driven back the front line. He can now more easily attack this idle swarm, but he doesn't really have much to attack them with. 18 Hydras on the way. The third hatch, third base, nearly complete. It's actually the fourth hatch, of course, actually looking at the count, but you guys know what I mean. Oh, and never mind. I tell a lie. It's the fifth hatch. Oh my god. 5 hatches, 2 Larvosks. Lots of production now for our homie. And he is the homie, man. If I say a replay from Krankendau, I know it works. I know I don't have to ask. Now we have some artisans coming. Okay. Arbuz taking a third base as well. You know, Arbuz is looking pretty nice. I mean, strategically, compositionally, he seems to be leading towards those sides of the aisle. A lot of other players are just sort of like the guys who just keep up a ridiculous amount of APM and constantly get their macro tuned down and stuff like that. And hey, that's a fairly valid way to play the game as well. Not going to throw any shade at that. Witness stepping forward, flying forward, floating forward, hovering forward, gliding forward. Many verbs. You wonder why I didn't call it a stepper or a glider or a hoverer. Because that's what it does, right? Ultralisk, by the way. So we do have the Lakizilisks sort of like deciding where to go. I think Crank has figured it out now that this is going to be an attempted move here, but the Witness is not keeping watch on the rest of the army. So now we're set up for a little bit of a flank. If the Zoryus can get on top of the idols, the Lakiz just moves so fast at that point. But is it going to be enough? It doesn't really look like it. The spacing could be a little bit better there. Golem's eventually going to be focused down indeed. But there's so many idols, man. We're talking about 18 idols over here. The Lakizilisks are doing as much as they can. They're kind of like a little bit too far away on both sides, and the ones on the left have already collapsed. Let's see how much damage the Hydras can do trading down. If you trade the army down and Arbuz has to fall back, this can still favor the Zerg. But honestly, the idol stacks here, yeah, sure, the Amaranths aren't going to be as sustained-oriented as the Golems are, or not as effective as without the Golems if they were there. But this is still a very scary attack force, right? And so let's see what more can be done. Unfortunately, Krankendau, I think he's only now realized, oh, I have this Ovaleth, I can absolutely use this to bop the Witness. But yeah, it's a little bit too delayed. Now the Amaranth's finally going down, the Witness along with it. Now the Lakizilisks can start to be a little bit more powerful. We see 12 of them in production right now. Krankendau doing his best to hold here. He's lost his Circuit finally. That's the one that remorphed so many times. And now the Zoryus are trying to stand on top so that the Lakiz can step a little bit further forward. Remember, there's no Witnesses with this army right now. Some random units down in the bottom there, but they're not going to be too impactful in this fight anyway, as Arbuz is going to go ahead and fall back. And again, that might seem like, oh, look at all of the Lakiz that Krankendau was forced to make. Sure, yeah, you've delayed tier 2. Make no bones about it, but the third is up and running for Crank, and not to the same degree for Arbuz. His worker count is a little bit low. He's got 19 workers on minerals, and about 14 on minerals in the main. So his main's a little undersaturated, but it's starting to run out anyway, so if he had like a lot more workers in the third, I would say this is fine, this is even. But I'm starting to favor Krankendau, even though he spent so much Vespene in the early game, right? Because as long as he doesn't lose these Lakiz, he can still affect change on the map using that gas investment. Whereas Arbuz just doesn't have quite as much. Now he does have some units in the bottom right. I believe those are going to be artisans. Man, this attack force is really, really quite spooky on both sides, but the Golem's staying alive. Ooh, whoa! Playing with fire there. Yeah, he does have 2 artisans in the bottom right. So at least he's getting a little bit more Vespene than you might be led to believe. Although he's not fully saturating his ridge, and he's not even harvesting from this geyser in the third. So again, could be a lot better. What is his fallback plan? And adding a synthetic Synod, some Atriuses and Amaranths queued up behind it. The Lakiz are just moments away from really putting the hurt onto Arbuz here. There's so many of them. But there's not that many non-Lakiz units, right? And so they're a lot less effective when they're the only thing there. But in this number, maybe that's not true. Forcing the Unburrow, though, he is going to go ahead and withdraw. Those Amaranths could be easy pickings if they were all going to attack at the same time, but it looks like Krankendau thinks twice about it. And again, if he loses all of those units, he is very, very behind. He's just about on the precipice of being able to grab tier 2. In fact, I think he can do it, but he just orders up 11 Zoryus. Maybe canceling one just so he can afford it. Yeah, it looks like that's the case. There it is. So if he can get those Zoryus out and then fight with everything at once, absolutely, this can be pretty good. But he's taking 12 o'clock. He's already taken 3 o'clock, and Lake is on both sides. Means that you don't need the Witness because you can just stand on them to reveal them in Cosmonarchy. But it is absolutely a requirement that you respect those Lake is. And you might not immediately know how many of them there are in one spot because of the burrow, right? Ministry in the middle, you can grab these geysers and return with them. Neutral town centers count as allied ones. Scribe moving in the general vicinity. Looks like he's headed to the bottom right natural, interestingly enough. Not interested in 6 o'clock. But down by 2 bases, although the saturation isn't quite there yet, although the gas is for sure. More workers being made. Krankendau feeling free to saturate both of his satellite bases now. Definitely taking a macro advantage, almost double the workers of Arbuz. But Arbuz is going for the Demiurge. The new Demiurge versus Zerg. Very impactful stuff here. Oh, wait, no, this is actually on release. But I think, yeah, this would have been the tournament patch for, like, May Royal Invitational. So it does have the new Demiurge. For a second, I thought, wait a second. Do we even have the new Demiurge? But no, we do. The Witness is spotting the whole army. Has seen the evidence of the Lake is. No evidence of tier 2 just yet, but the Vornath, the Kalkir is coming, right? The pool into Lake upgrade, so we can see some Lyrilisks there. They served Krankendau very nicely in the Invitational. Following that, we have the Spire. Ooh, we even have the Tethvith Swamp. Okay, so we are going to see just a whole menagerie of tier 2 Zerg. A lot of additional defenses. He's even mutating them into tier 2 variants. Love to see that. What is Arbuz's plan? He still doesn't have the bottom right natural. He hasn't taken that. I think he's very much reliant on his composition working with the Demiurges. He's only got one of them out right now. And you know what? There's 10 Lyrilisks mutating. If we get some Protathalors in the mix as well, it feels like the Demiurges are not going to be able to do too much. And now they're revealed, right? So 5 Protathalors already queued up here. The Demiurge not on the front line to reclaim these units. It will be able to turn the Zoryus back upon them. So that's definitely something that can happen. Rilla Rokors as well, mind you. Lyrilisks now trying to join the fight. Forces on the right-hand side backing up as well. Krankendau trying to buy time for his Protathalors to pop out. All right. This is a scary push. And now it doesn't really look like Krankendau can do a full surround. He has a couple of units that he's going to go ahead and pop out over here. Protathalor starting to try to focus down the front line. There needs to be that focus fire onto the golems. It looks like they are going to be brought down. Ooh, hostile Zoryus taken over. Very spooky indeed. Where are the Protathalors and why aren't they attacking the Demiurge is the main question I have. The front line seems to be falling for both players. That kind of bodes a little bit better for Arbuz in this position. But yeah, indeed, that Demiurge is starting to take a lot of damage. Hydra's sicking after it. Protathalor is zoning it away. Now attacking from the high ground. We got some Lakes over there. If your units get drogged in, that's not going to work out either. And again, trading down the military with no economic damage. Arbuz is not favored in that position. He's got so much money. He has tried to evacuate. His Demiurge is still alive. Some of these Hydras overstepping for sure. But Crank has so much money, and he has so many Protathalors coming, and so many... well, I was going to say so many other units, but actually that's not the case. He's got a lot of money in the bank, though. I'll tell you that much. All right, spending down. 27 pairs of Quasis. He needs those Lyrilisks. That's what he says. Idle workers at the third base. Arbuz still no fourth. It feels like he's kind of on the precipice. He needs like a dominant victory. He needs to trade cost efficiently, way more than he normally would in other situations. And he's going to get a second Demiurge, so it's possible that he can take over the units. But the Protathalors have the range. To some degree, the Lyrilisks do as well. We don't see an Alcag Eteth, but the Kagralisk would be great here as well for that position, that requirement. You don't need to outrange the Demiurge itself. You just need to outrange its passive effect of, say, 6 or so for actually taking command of enemy units. Lyrilisks doing what they can. If it's out of range of the Demiurge, it just dies after a certain amount of time. So that's what you saw there with that Quasilisk. Okay, trying to focus down and see if he can break this position. But it is scary for the flank. You can see the massive Zerg units on the way. Demiurge is about to get closed in on. What is the reaction here? The lake is going to go ahead and burrow, but it will be taken over. There is no detection here for Krankendau, so losing his own Lakizilisk is going to be a little bit awkward here. Arbuz does have it, but it does get stepped on and destroyed, and the Demiurges are gone. That is the big army fight, swinging massively in favor of Krankendau. Arbuz taking a moment to realize, oh, I never took bottom right. Natural, I've got this Zeth over here that I'm going to kill with my scribes. Down a lot of bases, adding Grand Libraries to spend down his mineral deficit. Another couple of Demiurges. Man, when you're queuing a Demiurge, you must have so much money. It's crazy. It's just going to pop in here and see that it's mostly undefended. And there's so many units for Krankendau. It does feel like it's a matter of time before the attack comes in and wipes him clean. Spiraling forward, has plenty of Tethzoricors and all sorts of meaty frontline units. Only a couple of Atriuses here. The writing seems to be on the wall. I don't know how Krankendau... Like, I don't know how many attacks Krankendau has in him, but I feel like it's going to be more than Arbuz can handle. He does have a Demiurge out, so there is potentially hope that he can try to hold out for a little while. But there's so many Protathlors, so many Lyrilisks, that he's going to need to start getting action on now. And I just don't know if he can, right? There's only Atriuses here. You think about what was so effective earlier, it was Amaranth and Golem and Idol for splash damage, and there isn't really that much over there. GG well played is called, as of course the Demiurge will fall. And that is going to do it for our first game. A 21-minute match between these two. Very nice, very cool. Well, we've got plenty more games to cast from here on out. So next game, we'll do 2 in a row, I think, judging by what I'm seeing for the replay sizes. I hope you enjoy. I know there were people who were saying they're really happy about a long upload yesterday. Well, like I said, we'll continue moving around and seeing what we can do for the lengths and stuff. But I'll give you guys a nice menagerie of content for now, and we'll settle in on a healthy medium. But this is what I can do today, so this is what you get today. GG's, and we'll be back tomorrow for more of this series. I really want to see, I think Arbuz might be able to tighten up the mid-game transition and really give Krankendau a run for. He was very deadly looking in the early game. See what else he's got coming up.